this is Ben. Ben Gillette, Ben and Teller. Big guy does magic, smaller guy next to me, he does magic too. He doesn't talk that much. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you to In Time with Nick. And, what's that, Teller? What's that, Teller, what's that? Oh, yeah, Teller wanted to say welcome to In Time too, but his mic is off, like Nick. Love you all. Peace.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Downtime. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've got a special show tonight. We've got Operator Starsky, and we have something happened with Viper's. Oh, no. Okay, Viper's shield is up. Oh, it's that we've lost him. I don't know what happened. We seem to have lost Viper. I have no idea what happened. I do know that because he's muted.
Nick.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
He knows where you live.
I'm looking at this.
We fixed. We've got it back. Sorry about technical. We're going to fire our producer after this show. I don't know what happened. I'm terribly sorry about that, Viper. But we can hear you now again. You are here. I'm delighted. Really, really delighted to have you. Okay. So this show. This is Downtime. We're going to be a little more laid back. We've already got some super chats. We're going to talk about what we're going to do here. But before we get started, I just want to say if I seem to be a little out of sorts, it's because Downtime's usually one-on-one or maybe two-on-one. This is 4, so this had to be rebuilt, which took all night. And an hour before the show, I get a call from a certain snake-like soldier, name is a kind of a snake, who says...
Sorry, I can't hear you saying what?
I get a call from a very nice gentleman who says, there's been a mistake, or he says, I can't wait to see you next week. Why are you saying the show is today? And I was just like, no, the show's today. He's like, no, it's next week. I have it on my calendar. It's next week. And I was like, no, it's today. And he's like, oh, well, I can't show up today. I'm heading out. I was just, what the? I was like, he goes, oh, just kidding, asshole. See you in an hour. Boom, hangs up on my ass. Fucking gave me a heart attack.
I still need to do that screenshot for sure.
Yes, you got to be careful when you're doing that to Nick, because we are in the United States. And healthcare is a bit sketchy.
I'm basically screwed if I have a heart attack, so don't do that again. Anyways, so if I'm a little testy towards Viper, that's why. But he's got a very powerful weapon, and it's been my experience that tends to forgive all debts. What I'd like to do is we're going to introduce both of these gentlemen, and then we got a couple of topics we're going to talk about, but we're also just going to sort of shoot the shit and see what goes on. We do have all of their information. Starsky has a research institute that we're going to talk about a bit. Viper has a fundraiser for some drones that we're going to talk about. We're going to be dropping links to Starsky's channel and for the drone fundraiser for those of you who are interested. So, Operator Starsky, I'd love to start with you. Please tell us a little bit about your background and about where you started and how you got here.
Oh my God. Everything started during the Revolution of Dignity, 800 years ago. Everything started with the Revolution of Dignity, actually earlier, because I also participated in the Orange Revolution. I took active part in, political life of Ukraine back then, not as a politician, thank God. So Revolution of Dignity, I was an activist, and then the hybrid war started with the annexation of Crimea and Donbass. My friend was captured by Russians near 𝐒𝐸𝐜𝐿 in 2014, so that was the turning point when I decided to volunteer as a special force police battalion operator back then. We had 3 deployments, and after that I went to the National Guard of Ukraine and enlisted as a machine gunner, then a sergeant, and 2018 I was promoted to an officer, commissioned as an officer. And last year I got retired after 10 years of service, and currently I'm running the Propaganda Study Institute here based in Germany, partially in Germany, partially in Kyiv, fighting and I forgot this English word. Oh my God, I need to practice more. And researching Russian propaganda, how it works, and how to fight it. And also I'm running my channel, which I use to deliver information to the amazing international community of almost 400,000 absolutely fantastic people following my channel, following the news from Ukraine, where I try to talk about the recent updates, why they're important in my personal opinion, and also how to fight Russian disinformation and Russian propaganda. So that's my story.
I am delighted to hear that that's what you're doing. I will say, as an American, if that institute had existed prior to Trump's election, the world would be a very different place. This needed to be addressed a long time ago, and I think both the U.S. and the U.K., U.S. and Europe are a bit back on their heels with just how much Russia has the influence. We may get into that. We do have a new member, Matt Leach Music, and I will say, and we were talking about this, we're an independent channel. We work very hard to stay independent. We get demonetized a lot, so members and super chats really do help, and we appreciate that very much. So thank you for becoming a member. Viper, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got involved, where are you from, and how you got involved in the war in Ukraine?
Okay, so I'm Viper. I'm a South African citizen. Was born in South Africa. Most of my life spent the time in corporate entrepreneurial company building. Then did 5 years. I did South African Defence Force for 4 years. Then I did 5 years of private military in Africa, and then went fully back to corporate again, and pretty much was still in corporate environment, my own company in Georgia. Still have it, but not very active in it at the moment. And then, over a year ago, decided to come to Ukraine and help them out fighting the stupid idiot Russian pidors, and send them back to their border and their shit country. And been doing it since. And have a great love for the Ukrainian people. Amazing people. Amazing country, very beautiful. And and now fighting until we can't fight no more.
So, a number of really rather disturbing things in a row have happened. First of all, and our audience knows this because we discuss this all the time, which was Ukraine was in fact a nuclear country. The Helsinki Accords, which we were very keen on because our Congress was at the time, presumably still cares, I don't know, but at the time, non-proliferation was considered the best way to prevent nuclear war across the board. We wanted as few nuclear countries as possible. Ukraine agreed to disarm if for certain guarantees, including A, Russia would not invade, and B, if they did, the U.S., Britain, and France would come to their aid. whether or not we've come to their aid is, in my view, very much debatable. We've sort of come to their aid. We have given definitely aid. We have done it, and it's been important. But it's been a lot less than we could have done. I think a lot less than they expected, and a lot less than we should have done, given the expectations, and B, the importance of Ukraine. So as a result, we now end up with a Ukraine that, first of all, did nonetheless unbelievably, it's staggering. I think 200 years from now, they'll be talking about Russia, a former superpower, invading Ukraine. Everybody thought it was going to be over in 3 days, and Ukraine kicked their asses out, and now they've just slowly, through attrition, been getting land back. But this ain't been a 3-day war. So now, Secretary of Defense of the United States, as we're under this Trump through the looking glass, Twilight Zone Trump administration, 𝐒𝐸𝐜𝐻 has said, we of all countries will not support Ukraine entering NATO. Without that, I don't see how Ukraine can get any significant assurance that even if there was some kind of deal, that where does that leave Ukraine? And that's up to both of you guys. What do you think?
Starsky?
Thank you, bro. Well, first of all, we didn't hear anything new because the US never wanted Ukraine in the NATO on the first place. We were never promised the membership, as long as I remember myself, since 2008, since Ukraine started this partnership with NATO. We were never allowed to become part of it, which is the reason the war started, actually. So there's a lot of people who have the IQ as big as in a seashell. They used to say that the war started because NATO expansion. Ukraine was never promised a NATO membership, especially after 2014, when Ukraine, according to the rules, according to the law, could not become NATO member physically, because we had a war on our territory since 2014, and we could not join the alliance, no matter how hard you try. So before that, whenever we asked about NATO membership, we always heard things like tomorrow or like after 10 years, not today. And that's why today in Munich, we didn't hear anything new, absolutely. So it's not surprising. Of course, Ukraine in the NATO, Ukraine as a member of NATO would literally be the solution to this problem. Not necessarily it would be a solid and everlasting solution, right? Because countries can exit NATO, unfortunately, as easy as they join, if they're not Ukraine, of course. But on the other hand, again, the very reason Russia attacked Ukraine was because they knew that Ukraine would not become a NATO member, that Ukraine would not be protected by the 5th chapter, and other countries will not send their troops to the Ukrainian territory. We will not see people from other countries on our territory, except for legendary people like my bro Viper and other volunteers who fight because this was their decision and because they were courageous enough to come here. So that is my answer. We will not hear anything like, However, on the other hand, I think Lindsey Graham today said that, then it sounded a bit ridiculous, of course, that if Putin attacks Ukraine one more time, we will make sure that it's NATO and stuff. It was kind of funny to hear, to me personally, even though I respect Lindsey Graham for what he does for Ukraine. But on the other hand, it was kind of funny considering the Budapest Memorandum. I mean, we already heard things like that that. So I personally don't believe much, such things. On the other hand, there is still question. There is a question on why the current American government doesn't want to see Ukraine as part of NATO. Is it because they continue the agenda that existed previously of not letting Ukraine being a member of NATO? Or is it because it was one of the Putin's condition? So this is something that I would really like to know. On the other hand, I don't believe in conspiracies. Like, I'm not entering that tinfoil hat territory. I'm not a big fan of this. And judging from what Mark Rubio says, judging from his position, because currently he has the most, I would say, sober position regarding Ukraine, he talks about things that other representatives of the United States top management don't talk about Russian aggression. He calls it the way it is and things like that. So I am not a conspiracist, and from what we see, I can tell that currently the top management of the United States and Trump administration, they slowly come to this conclusion that they need to support Ukraine.
Viper, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think a bit different. Probably because I've never been in a NATO country, so I can't say much. But I can tell you this. I honestly think Ukraine will not become part of NATO purely because of what the chapter says. I mean, if there's any disputed area in your country, you cannot become part of NATO and EU for that matter. My honest opinion is that Ukraine just needs to develop their own nuclear capability, because that would be a very strong deterrent for Russia. I mean, it was taken away from them unfairly. And so for me, I would say develop your own nuclear power and then see where it falls. Because if you've got that capability, you've got that stick that idiot across from us has been throwing around nilly-grilly. And yeah, that would definitely put him in his place, for sure.
How has the war changed since from when Starsky was first starting it to when a Viper is fighting it now? I know one of the changes has been drones, which has just grown in leaps and bounds. Can we talk a little bit about how that has changed, how you guys operate in the theater?
Yeah.
I think tell me how you guys operate, and I can tell you how we now operate. I mean,
yeah, let's do it, because it's a long story. So not only drones, because during 2014 until 2022, aviation was not involved. Early in 2014, Ukraine used its aviation to strike Russian targets until Russians started using massively anti-aircraft measures like Russian 𝐒𝐸, those manpads, massively shooting down our airplanes. And of course, in 2014, this case when Russians shot down the MH17 Boeing heading from the Netherlands to Malaysia, killing 298 people on board. So we were not involving aviation after early 2014. And generally, we had almost everything else. So there were no Russian missile strikes, there were no Russian drone strikes, there were no Russian aviation involved. Besides that, we had more or less the same situation. There was big number of Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups involved. There were sniper wars, there were tank attacks, there were artillery strikes involving howitzers and multiple launch rocket systems, because Russia was literally pumping up the Donbass with its weaponry and its soldiers as well. So there were two hybrid Russian armies operating on the territory of Donbass. There was so-called Armed Corps 1, Armed Corps 2, and also there was Armed Corps 3 being created in 2016 on the territory of Russia near Millerovo airfield. It was their main headquarters. The number of troops back then on the territory of Donbass consisted of between 35 and 50,000 Russian terrorists. It was a mix because there was army of the separatists, and also everybody else, Buryats, Yakuts, Russians, like ethnic Russians, everybody. People from Brazil, like 𝐒𝐻𝐬𝐜𝐿, notorious 𝐒𝐻𝐬𝐜𝐿, the terrorist, and Russell Bentley, who was improved recently by his own Russian allies there in Donbass. There were like mercenaries coming from other countries, but mostly, of course, Russians, and they had Russian management, Russian command. So generally, it was like a hybrid army. And I remember we personally, like my units, when I was in the Special Force Police Battalion in 2015, we fought in Mariinka during the operation for liberating this town, because Russians decided to take control of it during the Minsk meeting, by the way. And we were participating in countering Russian troops there, which was done successfully. We had some extremely heroic point in our history during this hybrid war that was happening there, which is Donetsk airfield, which was held by Ukrainian defenders for 242 days. It was the hottest spot in the front lines for 242 days. And later, 2017, 2019, and 20, my brigade was deployed to the Svitlodarsk Bulge, places like Svitlodarsk, 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐿, Travneve, those villages not far from Debaltseve, actually. And for a while in 2019, that was the hottest spot of the Ukrainian front lines, where we had a lot of close contacts with Russian troops. There was this terrorist battalion called Somalia operating against us, and we had also cases of tank battles. We were shelled constantly. I lost a good friend due to the artillery fire there. And another friend was also killed by heavy machine gun fire. So we had pretty much like the picture looked like that. Besides air support, besides missile strikes, and of course besides drone strikes, because we mostly use drones to conduct reconnaissance. We sometimes use them to drop stuff. However, you know, back in those days, it was extremely regulated in the Ukrainian armed forces, so you could not generally throw things. There were several cases, and they were actually very not famous, but known cases when our guys tried to modify those drones to make them able to drop things on the Russian terrorists. It wasn't in my unit, but in a different unit. Several of them unfortunately died due to the malfunction. So it was regulated. We could not really use drones to eliminate Russians in big numbers. However, nowadays, I think about 60% of the Russian vehicles are being destroyed by drones, and I think that my bro Viper can tell you more about that.
Yeah, so now obviously drones play an integral part of us fighting the Russians. A lot of the drone technology that we use helps us not only with reconnaissance, but actually serves as spotters for artillery pieces. So you've got multiple systems that can actually interlink into the coordinates that's given through from a drone, live, real time, all the time. So that helps a lot with how we conduct and how we operate. Also, something that I want to mention is only in the time that I've been in the ZSU, also, I can say that people intend to forget and get stuck at, you still sit with a Russian-minded general that was schooled in Russia. And then I always say, guys, you must remember one thing. All the old people that you can see that's above 50 has been in the Russian army because it was the bloody USSR. You need to understand that, for one. And two, you need to understand that this is a country at war. We cannot go and try a new NATO exercise and withdraw. Okay, hold on, Russians, just wait for us a little bit. Just wait. We want to just train our guys quickly how to do left flank contact, the NATO standard. We cannot do that. And people need to understand that. And they don't understand it because they're like, oh, yeah, but I can tell you, over the year that I've been in the ZSU, the amount of structure, the amount of change, the amount of leaning towards a more integrated, freely communicating battalion or brigade has jumped probably 10 to 15 years that it would have taken a normal army in not a combat war situation. And we have jumped and leaped a lot. In 2022, one of my mates arrived. I will never forget the 26th of February. And he literally, they gave him an AK, they gave him a magazine and say, okay, you're going to Kyiv to fight. So, I mean, but it was a country at war. There was no other way of doing it. Nowadays, it's regulated, weaponry are regulated. I mean, I sign probably 50 pages a day of different accruals for specific things that's used. And I mean, we maintain that, and it's that also has changed a tremendous amount. I mean, only from 2022 to now, 2025. In a couple of days, 8 days from now, we are 3 years in this war. And if you see the amount of change that an army that is at war had to endure while holding a line, while the whole world told us we so shit, we're only going to hold the whole country for 3 days. Well, guys, 3 years later, and we're still holding. And we'll continue to hold for another 3 or 10 or whatever, how long it takes. And so people need to understand that. So, yes, there's technology. I wish sometimes I'm freely allowed to speak about drone technology. It is phenomenal and mind-blowing. I think most Western countries, including your shit America, need to send representatives here so that they can actually see what is the technology and actually be able to build systems based off Ukrainian drone technology. It's phenomenal.
Well, Zelensky said it that, yeah, the Ukrainians, the U.S. may lead in a number of technologies, but Ukraine leads in drone technology, period, end of discussion.
I mean, we have a naval drone with a multiple rocket launching system that can be deployed with a tremendous amount of range in a sea. I mean, we sank almost the whole of the Black Sea fleet without owning a vessel or operating a vessel, military vessel. Not even having a navy. Come on, guys. It's not rocket science, is it?
Well, so, yeah, okay. So, and I'm curious if Xander has any points. I wanted to bring up, I think, only one other thing, which is that, you know, in terms of, dear Lord, it's almost like the Western ideology is that of life, and sometimes of excess, right? Really enjoying life, and you know, but that's kind of the Western ideology. The Soviet mindset is almost anti-life. It's not even death. It's anti-life. It's crushing the human spirit, crushing independence, crushing free thought. It's lives are disposable. That's how Putin sees his entire military, and that's a mindset going back, even, you know, going back to the Tsars, going back prior to the Soviet Union. So that's always been a bit of a concern when we talk about nuclear weapons. That mindset, you know, now certainly the oligarchs are a little bit, believe it or not, closer to the Western mindset in as much as they love their lives and they want to keep their money. But earlier today, a drone from Russia struck Chernobyl and did damage to the outer shell. There's been no increase of radiation that anyone has detected. There is a sarcophagus inside of that. I do not have the qualifications to opine on what it would, how many strikes or what it would take to pierce the outer shell and then maybe damage the sarcophagus. I don't know if that strike was deliberate or not. The prevailing winds right now, Belarus and Russia. So if they do any damage, I don't think they care. I do not think Russia said, "Hey, let's look at the prevailing winds before we hit this thing." I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but any thoughts on? I mean, either the Russian attitude, are they playing Russian roulette? I mean, there's a reason it's Russian roulette. What the fuck are they doing hitting this thing?
Bro, yeah.
Starsky, go. Shoot.
Okay, thanks. So that is just my opinion. That, by the way, there is also in the comments, I noticed. I believe that it's like a Russian attempt to scare Europe because, for example, Germany has elections in a couple of weeks. And Germany is, I would say, a bit anxious about nuclear power, nuclear energy, and things like that. Nuclear safety, that's the word. So, but it was a deliberate strike. We know that the drone was flying at an altitude of approximately 85 meters. That was reported by President Zelensky as well. And it was a deliberate strike. They often fly over the Chernobyl power plant. And this one hit it directly. So currently we know that the situation is under control. There was a fire, it was localized, and our rescuers, they had to disassemble part of that sarcophagus in order to eliminate the fire, the possible new source of fire. They removed most of the debris, and currently it's under control. The radiation levels are nominal as for the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So that is my theory. I think it's like literally they're trying to play with the feelings of Europeans and Germans especially.
Yeah, it never seems to amaze me how shit they can be. So, yeah, I just, again, yeah, it's scare tactics, which they're very well known for. I mean, they would love to bark, but their bite is not that. They like to scare people. Well, it's the same question. Why do they eat children's schools or hospitals or civilian buildings. Very simple. It's a scare tactic of them.
All right, we've got. I want to get to some super chats here. So Johnny Negregard, 22 Norwegian krona. Hello, community. Slava Ukraine. Thank you so much for that, Johnny. You've been a supporter for a while. We really appreciate that. Dunk on you. $20 for Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. Never give up supporting Ukraine. Amen. I'm not a fan of good versus evil kind of analogies, but this is, in my view, kind of that situation if ever there was one. So thank you very much for that support. That's $20. And also, Dunk on You gifted 5 memberships. That's, again, very generous, and you've been a generous supporter, and sir, we thank you. Blonde Bombsheller said, thank you for all of you, your support and care. Blonde Bombs, name sounds familiar, but I think I've seen her in our live chat on occasion. I don't know. I'm going to call her something else, but I value my life. Spy Deflate, Felena, gifted 1 in-time membership. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. And Matt Leach Music, $10. Victory for Ukraine would be victory for the entire free world. It would. It would, and I want to ask about that, but I want to liven up the topic a little bit before we get to that. And talk about everyone's favorite cartoon character, Donald Trump. So when he was elected, there was, I think in Ukraine, this sense of, well, he can't be worse than Biden, who was giving only 10% of the promised support. In my view, Trump is worse. I don't know. It looks like he's... what's the opinion of that you're hearing in your respective countries of a country that would elect him, and what you guys see happening in the U.S.? Do you see that emboldening Russia? And this is where I have a hard time defending myself against Viper's constant, never-ending rhetoric against the United States. We elected Trump. I have no defense.
I have to ask you, is that the only fucking 2 people that you've got in your country? One is an invalid, the other one is a clown. I mean, is there no more people in America? What happened to all your billions of people that you've got?
I haven't a fucking clue. They all voted, but either somebody was putting high doses of mescaline in the water. I have no fucking answer. The funny thing,
I give you an answer, Nick. It's simple. It is all the fucking narcotic problems that you've got that the Mexicans bring.
Yeah, it's well, or the ways to make it that come in through Canada. Jesus, and I'm sorry, Canada. I offered a Canadian friend of mine cookies with maple frosting, and she's like, "You think that even remotely makes up for saying that we're going to be the 51st state?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I know that's a little arrogant even for the U.S., but that seems to be where we stand." The funny thing is, I think Trump has one redeeming quality, which is he really doesn't give a fuck whether anything's accomplished or not. He just cares that he gets the recognition. So Mexico doesn't really have to send troops to the border. Canada can say, oh, we're going to do all the things we said 6 months ago that we're going to do anyway, and then Trump is just going to take credit for it, and he doesn't care. Now, the downside is his word is worthless, so he just goes ahead and, after promising no tariffs, just did tariffs anyway. So, but what are your thoughts on the Marmalade Mussolini?
Is that an answer? Or is that an answer?
That's yeah. There's nothing to be said.
Well, just a second. I was writing a comment here. So, my opinion is that we don't know much yet right now at this point. Again, when Biden was helping Ukraine, in his communication, it was always like, we will help you for as long as you need, for as long as it's required. We will be like delivering you all sorts of stuff, but maybe not today, but tomorrow. NATO membership, maybe sometime in the future, and like nothing changed at all. What changed is more aggressive, more intensive conservative narratives, and those narratives are also correlating with the Russian narratives. That is something that I can see. For example, recently, Tim Pool restarted his channel at YouTube, and he pays YouTube for promotion, by the way, which is crazy. I would not see that happening, Yeah, so that is true. Other than that, not much changed. Speaking of Trump, well, I don't like to criticize our allies. I can criticize Trump for what he said about Ukraine before he became a president, because when he was talking about it, my God, it was obvious that he's not really familiar with the situation, because generally he didn't care much. Now, of course, he has to address the promises he made to his voters about Ukraine, about stopping the war. Even though it didn't take 24 hours, maybe a bit longer, but we will see what he will do. I can tell you my opinion on what he will not be able to do. He will not be able to convince Putin to stop his aggression. He will not pressure him with. He will not be able to pressure him to peace negotiations with sanctions, and there is a lot of reasons for that, because currently Putin is preparing for a long conflict against Ukraine and against the West. He tries to integrate more countries into BRICS. He develops his cooperation with North Korea in terms of weaponry, in terms of all kinds of long-range drones. They will be produced on the North Korean territory now. And generally, we will see things like Shaheds flying over Japan, maybe Taiwan as well, and of course the South Korea. Putin is indoctrinating Ukrainian minors that were kidnapped from Ukraine. Their parents were killed, and they were kidnapped and deported to Russia. And they indoctrinate them massively in the military camps for teenagers. We can see that all the time. There's a camp in Crimea. They go to that camp. There's also several camps on the Russian territory, where basically they grow new generations of people who will become Russian invaders in the future. Unfortunately, that's a terrible fact. And I believe that United Nations even had a report on that. So Putin is preparing for a long conflict against West and against Ukraine. He has a long-range plan, because all this is a strategy. It's not that, he goes to North Korea and signs agreement for North Koreans to send thousands of their troops to the Russian territory just because, just because he wants to look badass. No, it's because he has a strategy. He has a geopolitical/military plan, and he wants to reach those objectives, even if it takes him years. Same with the Russian informational warfare taking place in the European informational space, and in the United States and in Canada as well, by the way. He involves multiple communication agencies. He involves numerous bot farms with millions of fake accounts in the social media, not because he wants, to fuck up people on the West, because he has a strategy. Everything he does has a purpose and a goal, because it's generally a military plan. If you know a bit about military, you know that nothing happens just because. It's because you have a goal and you have a strategy of reaching this goal. Same with Russia. Russia is not ready to change its strategy only because Trump is elected. The reason Trump is in the news everywhere right now, in the Western media and in the Russian media specifically, is because Russians created this myth that Ukraine is American puppet, which, by the way, again, a lot of Trump's supporters, those who also support Russian terrorism, they say that it's a proxy war. I'm sorry, when Trump was president, until 2019, we had all sorts of trainings with NATO troops on the Ukrainian territory. We were receiving different sorts of weaponry from the United States, javelins and things like that. Thanks to Trump, we were training with American troops, and it was a fact. So generally speaking, does it mean that Trump also, participated in this like puppet show, according to the Russian propagandists? Fact is, Ukraine, of course, is not a puppet state, and this is something that Russians are not ready to accept. And a lot of people that were brainwashed with Russian propaganda, they're not ready to realize, to understand this fact as well. Therefore, the reason Trump is on the news so much is because Russians are saying, look, we are not talking to Ukraine about peace negotiations. We will talk with their masters. That is something that they want to promote, that it's a proxy war of the West. So same situation basically in the Western media, but Western media have a different purpose for that. So that is what I think about Trump. I think that eventually, that is generally just my personal opinion, I think that eventually they will come to the to the proper conclusion, and they will make proper steps in the end. But before it happens, they will see a lot of bullshit from Putin, who already did that back in 2019. President Zelensky was just, my God, he was just elected, right? And President Zelensky was, I think we can compare him to Trump nowadays, back then, because we had this, President Poroshenko, who kinda acted like Biden. He wasn't really decisive, let's say, and President Zelensky was offering a lot of radical changes that would take place right away. So when he became a president, he tried to negotiate with Putin because he was so much convinced that it's possible, and he failed dramatically, because you cannot negotiate with Russians. They never change. They will always lie. They will fuck you up. They don't care about you. They only reach their goals. They despise you, whoever you are. They don't care about your perspectives. They only care about their goals that they will be reaching no matter what. So that is the same situation that is happening right now. Putin is saying, yes, I'm ready for peace. I'm ready to talk peace. And my condition for peace is we want part of Ukrainian territory. We want Ukraine out of NATO forever. We want no international troops on its territory. We want Ukrainian army to be decimated. I want peace, right? That's just my conditions. So Putin has different understanding of peace. It's not like Putin wants to just withdraw. And thank God Marco Rubio also understands this. So that's the situation as I see it.
Yeah, from my side, I would like to call up 𝐶𝐚𝐬𝐶𝐿𝐴's interview that was in the media, and I think she summed it up very, very good. If Trump and Putin thinks that a decision will be made without Europe and Ukraine, there's no way they're going to be able to implement it. And again, I would 100% support that. I mean, and then the other thing is, I had one of my soldiers today come to me and say to me, "Yo, now Trump this and Trump this and Trump that." And I actually said to him, "You know what, bro, to be honest with you, let's just logically think about this." I said, "Well, you're not in a position of power for American policy. I'm not either. But I can tell you now, what we can change is what our duties are and the work that we have to do. So let's focus on that. Let's forget about the politics. The politics will sort out the politics. It's always done it in the history. What we can focus on is our immediate threat now, our immediate threat in Ukraine, and what the work is that we do. That is what we can focus on. So we'll do that to the best of our ability, and the powers will sort out what needs to be sorted out."
All right. Well, thank you for that. So we've got $10 super chat, Onion, Starfry. Those of us in the U.S. who are self-aware and conscious are either looking for ways to leave soon to fight the good fight in Ukraine, or use the influence we have to try to raise awareness. 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐶𝐸? I'm not sure what that. Okay. Thank you very much, Orion, for. Yeah, I did. Sorry. Like I said, I'm tired, and somebody woke me up to tell me that he wasn't going to make it to the show. I don't remember who it was, but it was not a very nice thing to do. Just saying. I literally said onion when it says Orion. I'm also dyslexic, so. Let's see. Dunk on You gifted another 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Dunk on You. You've just been so reliable and such a supporter. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. And Linda H. also gifted 5 memberships. Thank you for that. Azandering, you've been awfully quiet. Any thoughts or questions or hands? As many hands as you'd like to bring out. We'd be delighted to hear about them.
Yeah, I had a culling of hands, so the avian flu, you know, they kind of look like that's how I made all my turkeys, was with my anyway. I guess you'd mentioned that you didn't like really applying a fight between like good and evil. I've always kind of viewed this fight more as a fight between self-determination and governmental determination. And it still irritates the hell out of me that the United States had to be wishy-washy about the whole thing. It had granted assurances. Many people are arguing that these assurances were not promises, that they were just, we might help you. I think that we gave a little bit more than that, and that if we want to continue having good standing around the world and being able to have some negotiating power, we really should stand up for our word, especially against what is obviously an aggressor nation invading an innocent nation of that. And had the United States stepped in right immediately, as soon as those columns started coming south, I mean, I couldn't help, but I think I even mentioned it at the time, that those columns of troops coming into Ukraine that first day were so just nice. I just wanted to see one A-10. Would have solved this whole issue. And then the United States could have simply said, because they lined themselves up for just a perfect strafing run with that 30mm Vulcan cannon. One strafing run from one A-10 could have ended this pretty quickly, with the United States simply saying, no, we aren't going to do this. You invade this country and we will stop you. End of story. And I think that would have crushed the entire war right at the beginning, because I don't think from all I've learned that Russia would have tried all the different shenanigans, because I don't think he would have expected such a strong stance from the United States and wouldn't have tried to risk actually invading. Whereas now he's gotten away with being able to put all of these threats out there and all of this escalation, that. The United States has been wishy-washy, and he's pretty convinced that he can push the U.S. around about their overall involvement in Ukraine. And now we've got a hell of a mess where we really are risking significant escalation if the U.S. were to just simply say, okay, we're done with this. We're literally going to take over Ukraine and push Russia out and allow Ukrainians to rebuild their country, which we could still do, but it's a lot more difficult now. If we'd just taken the stand at the beginning and said, no, we aren't allowing this, I think this would have been over the day they invaded. But of course, we can't go back and can't change history now, and it sucks, because I think that the U.S. really dropped the ball. The ideals of what the United States was supposed to be. It was supposed to be that shining city that serves as a beacon to all the world of the glorious freedoms that individuals could have, and as an example for other countries to follow. And we've become a very poor example of that. So it was a great opportunity for us to try and kind of get back to the roots of what our country was founded for. The reason it sought independence from Britain to begin with, and why people made the very treacherous and deadly trip to try and get to the United States. So yeah, I think we are a world leader, and we should have stood up with some leadership. And I think that this would have ended very quickly, and untold tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people would not be dead right now. So it's frustrating.
Well, so let me ask this, and then we'll wrap up and do some outros. But before we get to that, let me ask this, which is a terribly unfair question. I do it to so when we first had Lance on, which was quite some time ago. Actually, I think we had him on regularly for Ukraine. I would always ask him. He would say, I'd ask him questions. Say, ask me any question except don't ask me to guess what's going to happen in the future, because I don't know. I was like, okay. From now on, every show, at least once, I'm going to ask you what's going to happen in the future. And I do. I said he's gotten good at it. I was like, project out. He's like, you son of a... So I can't... Lance is the one I get to push around. So I'm gonna. It's very difficult. It seems to me, unless I'm missing something, that Zelensky is in a very difficult position. The defense secretary for Russia has already said, we know if there's a ceasefire, all they're going to do is build up so that they can try to take back the land and or resist, any future. So we aren't going to accept a ceasefire. Trump can't force it on anybody. He thinks he can, Well,
wait, I would like
Yep.
I would like to correct you a little bit.
Please.
He absolutely can enforce a ceasefire. He's not willing to do it because it would require the full authorization of military use of the U.S. military to do this. Our U.S. military is perfectly capable of enforcing a no-fly zone and a ceasefire. Trump is unwilling to do that.
That is a very important correction. Thank you, Xandern. Trump is the United States has been and continues to be unwilling to enforce either a ceasefire or to help an innocent nation defend itself from an obviously hostile aggressor. So, how is this going to play out, at least in the near future? What is Zelensky? Is he going to stall for time? Is things just going to continue while politics, and I know, Viper, that this is not your area of specialties, especially since you're on the front lines, but I'm going to start with you anyway and see if you have any thoughts or guesses as to how this is going to progress. Yeah.
A very, very nice Ukrainian words that I've got taught here, and maybe Starsky can explain to you what it means, which is 𝐒𝐚𝐦𝐚𝐫. That's pretty much who the fuck knows. in Ukrainian language. So at this stage, again, for us, a ceasefire or a conflict freeze, and I've said it many times and I'll continue saying this, means that the blood that was shed, our brothers and sisters that died on this front line, died for this, nothing. And I cannot see how a country could do that. Because it's easy. You can just go to Kiev, go walk where all the flags are planted. When I was in Kiev now, a couple of weeks ago, I had to go with Jana from Project Constantine to go and put a flag for Pete. And as I walk, I remember that's the flag we planted for that friend of mine. I remember that's the flag where we planted for that friend of mine. How do I honor those fallen heroes' memories? We love to say, Slava Ukraini, Heroum Slava. Heroum Slava, glory to the heroes. How do we say that? By agreeing to a ceasefire or a frozen conflict. I just can't see it, to be honest.
Starsky, any thoughts?
I agree with Viper 100%. If we just agree to give out our home for millions of Ukrainians who had to leave their houses, and considering that we lost our friends, our fathers, our sons, our sisters, that just means that we're worth nothing. That just means that any fuck with enough power can do whatever he likes, that you can invade whoever you like, because the law doesn't mean anything anymore. The very idea that Ukraine must be forced for peace, being a country that was invaded, we didn't do anything wrong, and nothing can justify Russian invasion. Why the hell should we give out something to satisfy Putin, to satisfy somebody who invaded us? Why should Ukraine give up its territory, its resources, its homes for people who live there? I cannot see why we should even do that. Putin, on the other hand, he is, and all the Russians who supported this shit, they are the ones who must be held responsible, who must pay reparations until the rest of their lives, until they pay out for everything they did to Ukraine. And of course, no money in this world can bring back our heroes who gave their lives for our country, and all the people from other countries who fought for it. They must, as criminals, as people who violated the international law, the international recognized borders, and all that stuff that United Nations are talking about, they must be held responsible, they must be punished. Why should Ukraine be punished? That's absolute nonsense, and absolutely no conspiracies about NATO expansion and American biolabs can justify that. 100%. Ukrainians will never agree on that. Zelensky today also said that he will not agree on giving up territories. It's completely out of question. Ukrainians cannot be forced to do something that is extremely unfair. That is the reason we had Orange Revolution. That is the reason our recent revolution is called Revolution of Dignity, because it's for a reason, right? And we have dignity. We will not play unfair games just because someone doesn't really understand like what's going on, you know, in a different country he has never been to. So that's my answer.
All right, I think very good answer. Thank you. Now, I hope everyone will stick around for a minute because we're about to get into something interesting, but I also wanted to do a quick programming note, which is that tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, Christopher 𝐒𝐬𝐜 is going to be on, and he is going to be sharing with us a discussion, a kind of a roundtable discussion on meritocracy versus DEI, the idea that, well, if you're hiring somebody, there is a best as opposed to are there multiple bests, and it's going to be a discussion. And 𝐒𝐬𝐜, as those of you who've been here before know, he is a professor at Rutgers University, a psychology professor, and guest host here on In Time. So we're looking forward to that. Also on Tuesday, we are going to be having Dylan Burns and Merck to discuss independent news. What is the role of channels like ours, and what do they play, and what responsibilities do we have? No credentials. I could come out and say literally anything I want to. How do we identify good sources, and what do we do when we find ourselves, the number of situations, dangerous situations that people like Merck has found themselves in. So we're going to have a discussion on is that important? Can we still rely on the media at all, or is there only going to be independent channels? And if so, how does one decide who to listen to? So that'll be Tuesday at, I believe that's 8 p.m. Eastern. Join us on the Discord, and you can learn more about these shows. And you can also, I believe Starsky is on the Discord. Viper's on the Discord. Starsky's always been very good about answering questions. So has Commander Macmillan, who wasn't able to make it today, but is very knowledgeable about these topics. So, having said all of that, each of you are involved in different projects, and I'd like to start with Operator Starsky. I was one of the last Americans out of the former Soviet Union. I was a high school student. I'd already studied Russian and was fascinated by languages, and I was over there for about a month visiting the Soviet Union. On our way to leave, I was very late, ran through Red Square, got into a bus, took us to the airport, nearly got shot for failing to bribe a customs official. That's how, when people tell me about, yes, I've seen the corruption. It never crossed my mind to bribe the customs official. I failed to do it, and a friend of mine did it for me, which was awfully nice because there was about 5 AK-47s aimed at my head. At any rate, when my plane landed, I heard the Soviet Union didn't exist anymore. That's how much. And I saw pictures of tanks rolling down Red Square. I was like, hey, like 24 hours ago, that was me. So I first got a taste of what Russian propaganda really is when I was there. I had heard of it, but I didn't understand it. And I got there and I realized that for truth is a concept that doesn't even really exist in the, there's just what we're told. 1984 by George Orwell was not, it was a critique of Stalin, and it was not a science fiction novel. It was exactly how Stalin runs things. You believe what you're told to believe. And yes, there's always the threat of violence if you don't, but the reality is you submit. You believe because that is what a patriot does. He believes what he is told by his government, and if on Tuesday it's different than Monday, well, it's always been war with Oceania. That is Russia. So after I learned that, I said to myself, I'm not sure that there's a greater risk to Western democracy than Russian propaganda, because while the U.S. does some things very well, include build a lot of military hardware, Russia appears, from what I can tell, to be the greatest producers of propaganda that affect not only their country, but everyone across the world. First of all, does this strike you as a reasonable assessment? And if so, what are you and your institution doing about it?
Currently, we are researching, we are working on providing answers for the society, because it's really hard to train people on how to be, smart and experienced in terms of countering informational warfare, but you can give them facts, right? So they can operate them, and we're trying in our work to provide that as well. But also we're trying to reverse engineer the Russian strategy for their informational warfare. That is against, again, it's waged by communication companies. For example, I worked at, back in my days, we had a lot of commercial clients. There were banks, there were communication companies. I worked for such companies as Sony Ericsson, for example, back in those days. So there were quite big clients. And nowadays in Russia, those companies are responsible for servicing their government. They work directly with Putin's administration, implementing their communication strategy. That is aimed at things like improving the level of fear among the European citizens, the fear of tomorrow, and things like that. They're crazy. And we understand that people should know about it. And it's, by the way, closely related to your topic that you will discuss with my bro Merck and Dylan Burns, how to select the proper channel to watch it, how to find the source of the information. The fact is, people will only find the source of information that they feel like watching, that correlates with what they like. If you like Russia, of course, you will be watching Tucker Carlson and Tim Pool. Doesn't matter. So the idea is exposing the agents of the Russian influence, not only Russian influence, in the Western media. The idea is also forming some kind of legal solution of fighting the Russian disinformation. That is, again, a combat weapon. But also, I'm trying to come up with a strategy for Ukrainian bloggers and other bloggers who support Ukraine, other reporters and journalists, so we could make our communication better. The reason for that is because Russian propaganda cannot create anything motivational. Basically, whatever Russian propaganda does, and all their informational strategy is based on, it's demotivation, it's fear, it's pumping hatred, it's sowing discord. I tell you this, Russians, during the elections in the United States, for example, Russians absolutely equally supported both candidates. This is the fact. Regardless of their political opinion and regardless of their further strategy regarding the United States, Russian bots were equally supporting both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's literally because they wanted to make people in the United States fight each other. They planned to provoke an uprising in the United States, a civil war, if you like. So we want those things to be exposed, and we want to reverse engineer them and talk about them. We want to also provide more frequent information for the public. Currently, I'm working on the communication strategy for the content creators, but unfortunately, I lack human resources to do that as fast as I anticipated. So that is our mission. We want to save democracy, and we want to improve the communication of the content creators who fight for democracy, who defend democracy, because it's maybe one of the most efficient ways of fighting the Russian disinformation. Because again, people like to watch what they feel like watching, what is convenient for them, what correlates with their ideas, and we need to reach wider audience of people, because Russians are working with the broad public. Their target audience is much wider than currently the audience that supports Ukraine. And we must make our communication efficient as well to reach all those people.
All right, and we've included links both to Starsky's YouTube channel and to his institute in the live chat, and they're also in the description. Thank you, operator Starsky, so much. Viper, you have a fundraiser. We've dropped the link to that a couple of times in the live chat. It's also in the description. The fundraiser is for Mavic, I think Mavic 3T drone. So it's a drone with thermals. Why is that drone so important?
First of all, Nick, I thought you want to... Starsky gave such a good explanation of what he does now for a living. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm an exterminator, professional, and I specialize in Russian cockroaches. That's what I do. But by doing that, we need...
it's not extermination. Starsky calls it improvement.
No, it's actual soiling. It helps us with soiling. It helps us nutrients in the ground. The trees grows better.
You're a farmer.
So I'm a farmer and an exterminator.
Yes.
What is that unfortunate quote that I believe Jefferson said later in his life that he regretted uttering? That every once in a while the tree of life must be watered with the blood of tyrants.
Must be refreshed. Must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one. All right. So drones.
Coming back to the drones. So part of we've been fundraising for 2 Mavic 3T Pros. For those who doesn't know, we pretty much use them for reconnaissance. Why the 3T Pro specifically? Because it's got thermal capability and it helps us to locate enemy. I am part of an attack group, or a what you would pretty much call an attack group, but that does recoveries. We do counter-attack work as well. So drones play an integral part of it, and specifically the Mavic 3T. Because it helps us to spot enemies earlier so we can respond earlier and assist our Ukrainian defense line. It also assists us in recoveries. If we have to do recoveries, it helps us to see where the enemy movement are, or to see the pattern of the enemy movement and try to get in and out without them noticing us. There's many ways that we use them. And unfortunately, it's a consumable. There's things like shotguns in electronic warfare. So we do lose them. And it's unfortunately, the ZSU is not in a financial, well, they're in a financial, but it's difficult to actually keep up and maintain and make sure that we have them. So we do privately fund and fundraise for them. This too specifically is coming to that unit 422 of the 42nd Brigade. And please, if you guys can help us, we are almost $1,100 away from the last Mavic, and then we can close this fundraiser. I know it's taken a long time. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a channel, or I don't have other ways and means of doing this, and time is limited. Unfortunately, we work on a Russian schedule, not on my own schedule. So yeah.
Well, Viper, I think I speak for all of us when I say you are always welcome on 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫 channel. With the
Whoa, hey, does that mean I get a pay raise?
Do you get paid?
Yeah, I order you not to answer that question. I don't know if I have any authority over someone whose paycheck is all zeros, but we'll find out. All right. I did want to ask a question because something you said was interesting. You said recovery, so I assume that means that you actually so you use these things to time it and to figure out where so that you can go behind enemy lines and recover either fallen soldiers or people who are trapped. Is that what you mean?
We're not like the PDRs. We've got normally yellow or green or blue tape around our arms. We do not use white or red because white or red means they're going to leave you where you die. We actually go and recover our fallen heroes. And obviously sometimes we've got injured people as well. So you want to go and recover that as quick and as fast as possible. And the drones makes it possible for us to maintain a visual so that we then can plan quickly and effectively to go and recover.
And one of these drones, so these drones have video, you're seeing what it sees. It goes out ahead, and especially if you're doing something at night, with the thermals, it could spot an ambush, which previously the only way you'd know about it is by walking into it. And it might cost you the drone, but it kept, is that a reasonable?
For a human life. I mean, these drones are expensive, but I mean, they help us a tremendous amount, and they keep us safe. You literally, that's what they do. They keep us safe. There's no two ways about it.
All right. Is Andrew any final thoughts before we go?
I appreciate what you guys are doing and trying to both raise awareness and combat propaganda, and standing firm, trying to keep your country free from foreign influence.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you both for coming. We really appreciate it. It's been a learning experience, and we look forward to seeing both of you again soon. And we wish you and all of those you fight for the best of luck. It's very uncertain now, and I think the more we can share the truth about that. What was that? I think. I forget the detail about Trump's call with Putin, but where he basically suggested that Ukraine had always been part of Russia. No, we need to, the lack of understanding has to be combated. So thank you, gentlemen, for helping us with that and joining us on our show tonight. And for those of you in our audience, again, we will be streaming live again tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, on the question of meritocracy. Thank you all very much, and have a good rest of your day.